Hey, in this video, we're going to break down the 3 most important entrepreneurial muscles you need to succeed. And let me tell you, it is not what almost everybody is looking for and what most people are paying for, which is why most people don't make it. Check out this whole thing. The 3 most important entrepreneurial muscles. And I'll say that it's not what almost anybody is looking for, because going forward, it doesn't make sense that these are the things that are actually going to make the biggest amount of difference. It's only looking backward that you notice, oh, what was it that actually got me through that time and helped me do that and go over there. So this is a lot of looking back wisdom that will hopefully propel you guys going forward and help you avoid some of the mistakes, etc. But first, let me say what it's not. Let me say what most people are focusing on and relying on and trusting and paying for and investing their time and energy into is not what's going to make the most amount of difference. Information ain't it. Motivation's not it. Willpower's not it. Discipline is not it. Pressuring yourself is not it. Following somebody else's rules, somebody else's template, that ain't it. In fact, a lot of those things are dangerous to build a business upon. That doesn't mean that any of those things by themselves are bad or that you never want to use any of those things. Of course, information is important, but you can't rely on these things. That's the problem, is that people are relying on things that are like icing on the cake. Right? The icing's important, but without the cake, it's just icing, and it's not going to give you what you really want. And in business, the icing around the business, the things that should matter the least are the things that for most of us matter the most. And I want to speak to motivation briefly, because this is the one that I see, and this isn't just in the coaching industry. This is a misunderstood concept, I think, that we rely so much on motivation. Again, motivation is important. It's critical to help us through certain moments, certain short periods of our lives. But motivation is not required to act. That's the huge mistake that a lot of people make. We think that motivation is required to act. If we feel like doing something, then we'll do it. If we feel like staying on our diet, then we'll stay on it. If we feel like going to the gym, then we'll do it. If we feel like doing Facebook Lives, then we'll do it. But here's the problem. Most of the time, you won't feel like doing it. So if motivation is required to take action, you won't take very much action, because you're going to be unmotivated more often than you're going to be motivated, because you're a human. Number one, motivation it's not a long-lasting state. It's a very short-lived state. If you're crazy motivated for something massive in your life, you can maybe stay in that kind of a peak state maybe for a few days. I don't know. But for most people, it's literally just a few minutes, because it's a very fast burning, fast moving, short lived and shallow fuel. And motivation is usually from external sources, meaning I'm motivated because people are going to like it, they're going to buy it, I'm going to make money, I'm going to lose the weight. So motivation is driven by tangible results. And tangible results are untrustworthy. You can't trust that what you're going to do is always going to create tangible results, especially in something like coaching or something like entrepreneurship. So when we're driven by the need for tangible results, we get caught in the loop that is really frustrating to most of us. So then what do we tend to do? We just try to get more motivated. And part of getting more motivated for most people means reducing the fears. See, we think if we have fears, we're not motivated, but we need motivation in order to act. We need to feel like doing the thing that we want to do. And we think that all the people that are doing the stuff that you want to be doing, you think most of the time that they don't have fears and they're always motivated to do those things. That's also false. So we just misunderstand what it takes to create human action. And especially when the emotions are obstacle. And we've talked so much about, in entrepreneurship, we have fear of failure. That's emotional. Fear of rejection, emotional. Fear of visibility, emotional. Imposter syndrome, emotional. Issues like with money, that's emotional. Relationship to sales, emotional. Marketing, emotional. Messaging, emotional. Like just about every obstacle that we have as an entrepreneur is emotional. That's why information is not going to work, because informational can't overpower emotional, nor can motivation overpower these emotional obstacles, except for a short period of time. So if we're talking about creating progress, like true move the needle progress, really all that matters is action. You're never going to think your way into doing something amazing. You're never going to affirm your way into achieving any goals or dreams. You've got to act your way in order to create the kind of evolution that you're all wanting. And when it comes to action, I don't want you to be driven by motivation. I want you to focus on habits. Because here's the thing about habits, you guys. Now, habits are not sexy. One of the things that we talked about in one of the earlier videos is that we tend to seek sexy. Habits are not sexy. Habits are fundamental. Habits are foundational. Habits are actually the opposite of sexy. Now, the results that they can produce are sexy, but the process is not sexy. And that's one of the reasons why we keep seeking fads. We keep seeking new. We keep seeking microwave. And habits are none of those things. That's one of the reasons why we dismiss the importance of habits, because we don't value them the way our brains are wired, especially in today's internet world and social media world. But habits are the only things that produce predictable results. They're the only things that produce predictable results. Habits are they're like recipes. You follow a recipe, you'll get the result based upon the recipe. And that recipe will never, ever, ever produce a different result than the recipe has the capacity to produce. But most people are wanting the results for recipes they won't follow. And here's the thing. Everything you want to experience, everything you want to create, everything you want to accomplish has a recipe. I believe if it's in your mind, if it's in the realm of possibility, if it can come out of you, then it can exist. And if it can exist, there's a recipe that can create it. It's just that almost nobody has either found their recipe. Well, nobody has found their recipe. I'll explain that in a second. Almost nobody identifies their recipe or creates their recipe or follows their recipe for all kinds of reasons. But I really want you to get this. If you have the potential to create something, success, writing a book, coaching clients, whatever kind of business you want to build, if you have the potential for doing that, and you do because you've learned lessons from your past that are valuable that somebody will pay for. So that means you have financially viable potential. If you have financially viable potential, there is a recipe. But nobody else created your recipe without you. So when you're searching for the marketing templates, if that template was created before that person knew you or you knew of that person, that's not your recipe. It might have ingredients that you can take to form your own recipe, but there is no recipe that's been created for you before you. There's no recipe for you that was created before you. That's why we keep talking about your recipe needs to have you in the middle and then build all the things around it. If you don't, it either won't succeed, or if it does succeed, it won't be fulfilling. So let me get to these three most important entrepreneurial muscles. The first one is adaptability. Your success as an entrepreneur is not going to be determined by your IQ, your intelligence quotient. It's not going to be determined by how smart you are. It's going to be determined by your I cubed. I with the little 3 next to it. I cubed. And the 3 I's stand for information, implementation, and iteration. I put this on the flip chart today. Information, implementation, and iteration. Information is where just about everybody focuses. So it's in big capital letters. It's actually bigger than the other words here, because this is where the majority of people focus. Implementation is what people are trying to focus on doing. This is the doing part. Let me take the information and implement it. But as an entrepreneur, nothing moves the needle until you get results and feedback, and then you start to iterate. Iteration means adjusting, adapting, changing paths based on the feedback that you got here. And then once you iterate, you can get more information to continue the iteration. This is like an entrepreneurial cycle here. But here's where most people get knocked out. They get knocked out right here. Can you see this? They get knocked out right here by the big, mean, angry feedback guy. Big, scary feedback guy. Look at the hands. Ah. Ah. The big, scary feedback guy. I don't know if you can see that. He's apparently doing like a sumo squat. Ah. So we get information, we implement, and then once we hit any negative feedback that doesn't match the expectations that the information gave us, it knocks us back down. This is the way most people are doing this. So the feedback didn't work. It wasn't the right thing. So that means we got to go back to the lab and get the right thing. And then right here is where motivation kicks in. Then we try to motivate ourselves to implement again because implementation was negative. Let me know if this is landing for you, if you can relate to this cycle right here. So the majority of the people, especially the employee mindset, spends their time just right here, just this emotional mess of trying to motivate themselves to get it right so that it will work this time, and never even get to the place where they can iterate. And this is where your business success lives, way up here. And then you're going to do the cycle and it's going to build upon itself. If you never get to accelerated iteration, you're not going to create a whole lot of momentum. You're not going to create a whole lot of growth, because every single step is just going to be like this fragmented, wishful hope. Like, I hope this one works. I hope memorizing my lines will give me the outcome that I want, or I hope changing my price to this is going to cause people to buy. I hope getting all fired up is going to allow me to stay in the spotlight. So there's just this hope cycle. And then we get knocked down, and then we try to motivate ourselves to just stand back up. When you become an entrepreneur, you never get knocked down. Just think about that for a second. You get wobbly for sure, but you never get knocked down, because the entrepreneur doesn't personalize the results. If we try something and it fails, the employee personalizes the results and says, I failed. And we don't want to fail. And if I failed, I'm a failure. That right there is the emotional knockout blow that most people are trying to avoid and then having to motivate themselves to recover from. When you adapt the entrepreneurial identity, you never get knocked down. Please let me know if this is landing for you, because it's the main reason. Like, this is the off-ramp. Most people take the off-ramp of personal failure, and then they got to motivate themselves to get back on, while the entrepreneur stays on the road, changes lanes according to maybe getting knocked around, but stays on the road, stays on the track. Adaptability. That's the first one here. The second one is resiliency, which is related. Resiliency is taking the feedback and going forward instead of backward. Pretty soon, this guy right here gets a lot less scary. Pretty soon, you can just neutralize this guy, and this guy actually doesn't create any emotional response in you. He's like, oh, Mr. Feedback. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you showing up. Resiliency is basically get whatever the feedback is and keep going forward rather than getting knocked down or continuing to go backwards. Resiliency is continuing, doing it anyway. When the conditions aren't met, when the expectations aren't met, you do it anyway. That's resiliency. And you all have the internal power of resiliency if you find it intrinsically, if you find it inside yourself. If you find the reason to get up and keep going and it comes from inside of you, you all have the power to outweigh anything in your way. Most people just don't find that. Most people just don't touch it because we're so programmed externally. We're so programmed extrinsically. In the coaching world, I think the definition of success in the coaching world right now is getting paid clients. That's extrinsic and it's tangible. If your fuel is extrinsic in nature, you will either fail, or if you succeed with the extrinsic external fuel, you won't be happy. It's impossible because nothing from outside is going to fill us up and fuel us up, nor fill us up in terms of fulfilling our values. So it's not going to happen. So resiliency is the second most important muscle, not necessarily in order. The third one is trust. Now, this is a big conversation, which I don't have enough time to go into here. I mean, we spend hours on trust in our workshops and we'll spend a lot of time on trust in the whole year-long program. And again, like so many of these things, trust has to be internal. You have to trust yourself to be resilient. You have to trust yourself to adapt. You have to trust yourself to not get knocked out by Mr. Feedback. You have to trust yourself to keep going, because if you don't, there will always be the external fear of catastrophe. But if catastrophe happens the way that we're thinking about it, and we trust ourselves, we'll still keep going because we actually are stronger than the storm. It's just most of us haven't touched that because we trust externally. We need things to go right. We need people to not lie to us in relationships. We need the things that we're going to invest our time, energy, and money in to be guaranteed to work for us. Here's what you want a guarantee? Here's the guarantee. You need to be guaranteed that you will work for it. Don't search for the guarantee that it will work for you. And I'll say, you don't deserve the success. If you're looking for the thing that will work for you, you need to have trust that you will work. You, no matter what happens, you will keep going. And when that's internal, then it's possible to stay resilient. It's possible to keep adapting. When it's external, it's virtually impossible because we can't control anything out there. All the stuff out there is not stable, and we rely on control and stability. So what happens when the uncontrollable and the unstable changes? If your action is dependent on things that you can't control, then when the circumstances change, they'll destroy you. But when the circumstances change to an entrepreneur, you can just pivot and adapt. When the circumstances change, the entrepreneur keeps going with the new circumstances because you have to. because there's an identity. The entrepreneur cannot stand still. That's the worst possible scenario. The worst catastrophe to the entrepreneurial identity is nothing happening. That is the entrepreneur's greatest fear, not growing. The entrepreneur is not afraid of failing. The entrepreneur is not afraid of losing. The entrepreneur is most afraid of not growing. And that's because our soul desires growth. Our ego is afraid of rejection. Our soul is afraid of regret. The employee is afraid of rejection. The entrepreneur is afraid of regret. Regret of, what if I don't? What if I never? What if I never get to see what's inside of me? What if I never get to witness my own brilliance? What if I never get to see myself the way that my seeker needs me to show up? What if I never get to feel what it's like to actually fly? That's what fuels the entrepreneur. And that regret is much deeper than the fear of, what if I throw a few $100s out there and it doesn't work? What if I try the thing and it fails? What if I show up on camera and nobody watches? That's what stops most people. But that's the exact thing that fuels the entrepreneur. But everything I've been talking about is embodied, you guys. And if you want a way to remember it, it's art. We've been talking about art versus science, creativity versus linear learning, art, adaptability, resiliency, and trust. If you have those three things, you will win. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know what the path is going to look like. I can't give you a timeline. I can't guarantee anything. But if you have those three things, success is literally impossible not to hit. Because you just get the feedback and you adapt and you keep going, you iterate and you keep going, you figure out what you need to work on for yourself and you work on it and then you keep going. That's just not the way that most people are in this business. Which makes a lot of people think maybe they're in the wrong business. And what I'll tell you is, if you have the desire to help people, you're not in the wrong business. But if you're struggling, you're probably in the business wrong. Which is great, because you can change that. And here's the other thing. Trust is not some external thing that we need to be given. Trust is in the golden Buddha. It's our clay layers that we don't trust and don't trust us and require trust to come from external means. The Buddha doesn't need to trust anything externally. So everything, and if you don't know that reference, go back and watch the video. I think it's titled The Buddha, the Navy SEAL, and the Life Coach, something like that. The story of the golden Buddha. So everything inside of us has the internal trust, but most of us just don't get back there. So the final concept that I want to talk to you about in this video is, what does it take to actually be a transformational agent? You know, we talk about, I love the term transformational agent. First of all, agent just kind of sounds like I got work to do, right? Like I got to go out. There's kind of a heroic sort of connotation to agent. I'm a transformational agent, and I can do that work through coaching or speaking or writing or blogging or vlogging or just talking. Agents do their work wherever they go. All the other tools and all the other variations is just ways that the transformational agent transforms. But what does a transformational agent need to be a transformational agent? This thought hit me a month ago or something when we were talking about this whole concept. A transformational agent needs agency. Now, I'm not talking about agency as a noun, like a thing that you go to or a company or an organization. agency as a concept of freedom and control. Somebody who has agency is able to create. You're able to move with agency. You're able to be free. You're liberated. Agency. If you don't have agency, what you have is dependency. So agency is the independence that you must have as an entrepreneur. You're either going to be an opportunity chaser or you're going to be an opportunity creator. Those are the only two buckets that you're going to fall into. You're either going to be a chaser or you're going to be a creator. Chasers are dependent. Creators are independent. Chasers have, I'll just say dependency. I was looking for a different word, but that's the one that fits. Creators have agency. Business is creation. Being an entrepreneur is creation. Coaching is creation. You can't build a creative endeavor called business with a creative product called coaching, with a creative person called coach, without agency. So one of the big choices for you to make is, are you going to stay in the chasing bucket? If you're a chaser, then everybody else needs to give you their version of opportunity. There always has to be a carrot. There always has to be a whip. And those things are going to come from other people because you're chasing. Now, none of you want to be a chaser. Nobody wants to be a chaser. But we've all been conditioned to be a chaser. We've all been conditioned that our agency is dangerous or embarrassing or unbecoming or selfish. We've all been conditioned that the risk is actually in releasing our agency, like unlocking it, not releasing like letting it go, but unlocking it. We've been conditioned that that's where the risk is. Because when we're independent, here's the thing, we're responsible too. We're responsible for the results. We're responsible for the feedback. We're responsible for the iteration. We're responsible to be adaptable. We're responsible for all the things that we create. And we're responsible for the mistakes that we make. And most of us don't want to be responsible for the mistakes. So we hand in our responsibility for our creation because we don't want to be responsible for the mistakes. You can't have one without the other. But most people are trying to get rid of their responsibility for the mistakes by asking somebody else, will you pave my path for me? Will you tell me what's guaranteed to work for me? I'm going to give you my responsibility. In fact, I'll pay you to take my responsibility for my mistakes away from me if you can guarantee that I'll have results. But even if they guaranteed the results, which they can't, but even if they do, those are not your results. You have no responsibility in there. You didn't build them. You didn't create them. You can't have any pride in them. You're not in there. But we're so afraid of feeling like it's our fault. We're so afraid of taking that personal rejection and getting knocked down and knocked out. We're so afraid of that we sacrifice our own sacred responsibility. And I'm talking about our responsibility to create something sacred, but I'm also talking about our responsibility to what is sacred inside of us. We have a responsibility to that. We have a responsibility to ourselves. We have a responsibility to our purpose. We have a responsibility to our dreams. Your inner child doesn't need to know that you will get every dream that you've ever had, but your inner child needs to know that you will try. Because if you won't, how can you trust yourself? How can you trust the single thing that you ever say you want if you don't trust yourself to go after it? It's because we've sacrificed our agency. We've given away our responsibility because we don't want to be at fault for the mistakes. Well, what if there was a way to take away the relationship to mistakes so that you don't feel like you're at fault and you have the resiliency and you just keep going anyway? You don't take any failure personally unless you take it powerfully, which is also possible, and you keep going and you create and you be responsible to the thing that was put inside of you to get out of you. Your lessons are not yours to keep and take to your grave. Your lessons are yours to teach. Those are somebody else's lessons. Once you've used them, you're done with them. Get them out of yourself and teach them to somebody else. I think it's the most selfish thing we can do, to hold on to our lessons when we're done with them. Hold on to our lessons when they've helped us overcome something that other people are experiencing right now, and we don't want to teach it because we're afraid of the lights. We're afraid of making some mistakes. We're afraid of imposter syndrome. What if they find out? Who's going to find out? And who are the people that give a damn about who you are? The people that are going to find out about your humanity are the people that need your humanity. The people that are going to judge you about your humanity don't give a shit about them because they don't give a shit about you. They're not your seekers anyway. They're not the ones that your lessons are meant for. They're not your students and you're not their teacher. So why are we so concerned about the judgments of people that are not even in our path, instead of being more concerned about the people that our lessons can help? That requires us to unlearn all the conditioning and all the program that we've been created, or that has been created around us. That's all intended to protect us. Listen, your soul doesn't need to be protected. Are you kidding me? Your purpose needs to be protected from who? From what? The only thing that we need to be protected from is our own punishment. That's the only thing that has access to our emotions anyways, our own punishment. So what if there was a way to change your identity? What if there was a way to change who you are, how you operate? Not focus on what you do with the information that fills you up, but focus on how you be with the agency and the opportunities all around you. The entrepreneur sees opportunities, and opportunities are everywhere. And the entrepreneur can figure out how to present opportunities to the people that need those opportunities. When the algorithms change on social media, the entrepreneur adapts, the employee dies. When somebody changes a rule that the employee is following, is building their success upon, when the rule changes, the employee dies. When the rule changes to the entrepreneur, the entrepreneur just adapts to the law underneath the rule and changes their circumstances, changes their paths, adapts, because they're resilient and they trust themselves. That's the shift, you guys. It's not sexy. It will take work. It will take time. And it's the only thing that's going to help. This is looking backwards. This is me telling you what got me through bankruptcy. This is me telling you what got me through the slow lane when I wanted to swerve to the left and just get hit by one of these cars and just put an end to all of this. This is me telling you what other people that I've talked to about all of the challenges of being an entrepreneur needed to get through. This is about giving you agency. This is about giving you the most important power in building your business. And most people don't want to learn how to do things. Most people just want things to be done for them. If you want things to be done for you, you're selling your soul. If you want things to be done for you, somebody else will always own you. Man, I felt that one. If you need things to be done for you, somebody else will always own you, which means you'll always be dependent on somebody else waving the carrot and cracking the whip. Or they might wave the carrot and you might crack the whip inside. But the creativity that all of us have is possible to unleash. It has potential. It has viability. You can build a business around it, but not by chasing. Only by creating. If you like this video, check out that video right there where we talk about the biggest problem, I think, in the entire world of personal development, which is the fear of success. So visibility is such a deeply seated fear for most of us. And I really believe that all of us